Loud bunch. I need to quiet down a little bit, but it's great to be with you guys. And usually when someone is speaking, they always want to kind of start with like an icebreaker. So I thought I'd start with a joke. And I know his name here, Elijah and Uriah, a little bit, but it's a joke about a vegetable. Would you like to hear a joke about a vegetable? Yeah. It's a little corny, but I still like to share it. Are you okay with that? Okay, you guys already missed the joke. It's corny. You good? Yeah. It was that bad. I got one clap back there. Thank you for clapping. That's fantastic.
That was your wife.
Oh, that was Heidi? And she's already heard it like 8 times because I tell it. That's the only joke I know, actually. But it's great to be with you guys today and to be really talking about God's heart for missions and really about what cross-cultural missions is all about. And really, even as Heidi and I were praying, leading up to today, and even as we were praying this morning, really our passion is not really to have you like, okay, everybody in this room, that you're going to go to Africa one day, or you go to Asia one day, or go across the land. But really, our passion is that all of you would truly love God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. Because if you love God with all of your heart, going on mission, whether it be here locally or around the world, it's going to happen. Because God's heart beats for the nation. And so really our passion is that you will love God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. That you will give your whole life to Him, and that you will serve Him in whatever way that He wants you to serve Him. I want to start with some good news. You ever have somebody say, hey, you want to hear the good news or the bad news? Which one do you want to hear first? What do you usually say? You want to hear the bad news first? Well, guess what? I'm going to share the good news first this morning. Here's the good news. In Revelation chapter 7, I think it's going to be up on the screen there. Revelation chapter 7, verses 9 through 11 says this. After this I looked, and behold, a great multitude that no one could number, from every tribe, from every nation, from all peoples and languages. They were standing before the throne and the Lamb, clothed in white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. So I share that verse at the very beginning, because it's very important that all of us remember that we have this Christian walk that we have. We are in this Christian walk looking at it from a victory standpoint. We already know the final chapter. Have you guys read a book before, and instead of starting at the very beginning, you went to the very end? Anybody ever do that? A couple of you have, but it's really not a great way to read a book. But in the Bible, we know what the final chapter is. In the final chapter, in Revelation, the final book of the Bible, it says that we win, that we are victorious, that one day people from every tribe, people from every tongue, people from every nation will be standing before the throne of God. And so we are living this Christian life from victory. From victory, we are living this life. And so it's very important that we understand that. And if we know that in the final chapter that we win, that people from every tribe, tongue, and nation will stand before the throne of God, we can now, just like as you read that book, if there's a scary part in the book, or something that you're fearful about, or something that you're wondering, I wonder what's going to happen at the end. If you already know the end chapter, it helps you to read through the book a little more easier, doesn't it? And so we know what the final chapter is. We know that we are going to be victorious, and that we are going to be in heaven one day before the throne of God with people from every tribe, tongue, and nation. Hey, how are you today? Hey, my name's Jonathan. What are you doing today? Hey, why don't you come up here and have a seat with me up here? Come up here and have a seat with me real quick. I'd like to get to know you a little more, find out about you. Where are you from? I know that we're in the country of Jordan here. Maybe you must be a refugee, maybe from Iraq. Are you from Iraq? Oh, true. You must be really hot inside that thing you got on there. Can I offer you a cup of water? Oh, yeah, please have a cup of water. Do you have a husband? How about any children? Do you have any children with you? Oh, I wonder how many wives your husband has.
Whoa, what's happening here?
I'm just trying to talk to this lady here.
I know you are, but she's a lady. First of all, you never talk to a lady
She looked like she was thirsty.
Yeah, I see your water, but actually, the second thing that you broke on the cultural rules is you never ask someone like half a cup of water. You always offer them a full cup of water. How many times did you ask her?
I asked her 2 times if she wanted that.
Did she answer you?
She didn't act like she was paying attention to me.
Probably because you're a man and you're not her uncle or family or relative, somebody in her family. So she
I
wouldn't
feel like
talk
they're
to
picking on me. I feel like they're picking on me.
And also because when you offer to an Arab, you should always offer 3 times. It's the rule. Yeah, it's the rule. And I also saw that when you were sitting down, you stuck your little foot and you put it like this.
Well, that's how I usually sit.
I know that's how you usually sit, but in another culture, this right here is an insult.
Well, why are you insulting me?
No, sorry.
I guess that I made too many mistakes.
It's okay. We can go and talk somewhere else. Do you want to come with me? Okay.
Very good. Anybody know why we did that little skit? No? Because, why?
So that we don't accidentally offend other people?
Okay, very, very good. That's ultimately what, I did a lot of things that were offensive. Did you catch some of the things that I did offensive that Heidi shared? Like some of these things I didn't even know. A lot of times when we first moved to Jordan, we were offering people cups of water, like to drink, and we didn't realize that if you didn't fill it to the very top of, like very, very top, that you were actually insulting them. So maybe today when you go home for lunch and you get a drink for your mom or for your dad or for a brother or sister, fill it to the very, very top, and when you hand it to them, they're like, why'd you fill it up to the very top? You say, Mom, Dad, I wanted to show you respect today. Okay, they'll like that a lot. That's a way that you can show respect in the Middle East. And then also like the bottom of the feet, that's very offensive to put towards someone, because the bottom of the feet is where you walk in dirty, muddy stuff. So if you put your foot up to them like that, it's like an insult. Some of y'all remember, you're kind of young, but a few years ago, President Bush was in Iraq and he was giving a speech, and somebody took their shoe off and threw their shoe at President Bush in the middle of the speech. And that was like a double insult because it was from a shoe that he was throwing at the president. And did anybody notice when she first walked up what I did that was wrong? That's right, I touched her. Okay? And also, now I couldn't see her eyes because she had the niqab on, but I was looking at her in the eyes. I was trying to. And a man in the Middle Eastern culture should never look at a woman in the eyes when they're having that conversation. Not so much, especially the women, not to look back to the men. But the reason I did all that is this morning we're talking about cross-cultural missions. Cross-cultural missions, and also we're going to look at bridges and barriers as we go through today as well. But cross-cultural missions, first I want you guys are broken up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if you girls in the very, very back, I think you senior girls, would y'all mind come closer to the front? I think that'll help, because I know you girls are really cool and sit in the back. But if y'all come up here and sit a little closer, I think that will help us. And if you could join a group, if you wouldn't mind joining a table, I think that would help us to do this. So the first question that we want to ask in your group today, yeah, come on up so I can hear you a little better when we get to that place. Thank you. The first question is, and it's going to be up on the screen there, what is culture? Okay, so take 2 minutes, and talk about what culture is, and then give a real brief answer when I ask. So 2 minutes, talk about it in your group, what is culture? Okay, what is culture? Everybody listen.
How people group acts, how they live, and their traditions.
Okay, how people group acts, live, traditions, okay? Same thing. Anybody else will have a different answer? What do you come up with? Pardon?
Same thing.
Everybody come up with the same thing? Okay, culture can be like a really big thing, like we have American culture here, then you have like Asian culture, you have European culture, but then it can be even smaller than that. Okay, some of you maybe go to Lord Botetourt, some of you maybe go to our homeschool, some of you maybe like William Burr. Is there different cultures at those high schools? Ways that people act differently maybe, or think differently, or treat others differently? Yeah, there's a little bit. Even within like this youth group, you can break it down even further. This youth group has a culture compared to other groups. Now you don't have like, because you're from the same country, you have some similar things, but they're also, you can break them down into like subcultures within a main culture.
And so, but ultimately, like we're looking big picture today, ultimately you're correct. It's like a people group. And next week, Mark and Lynn Plum are going to be here, and they're going to talk more about people groups around the world. And so we're not going to go into details about that today. But really, when we're saying cross-cultural missions, what does it mean when we say cross-cultural missions? What does it mean we're doing? What does the word cross? When you cross a bridge or you cross a street, what are you doing? You're going to the other side. Okay, so you're entering into a new culture. How many of you are 15 years old? There are a few 15-year-olds? Okay, when I was 15 years old, I had an opportunity for the very first time to go on a mission trip cross-culturally. And I went to the country of Slovakia, which just a few months before I went there was a part of a bigger country called Czechoslovakia. And then I also went to the country of Russia. And this was soon after the walls of communism fell. And so it was a very, very unique and interesting time for me. And it's really ultimately the time in my life where God opened my eyes. As I went to a different culture, I saw that people thought differently. I saw that they spoke differently. I saw that they lived differently. And a lot of things were different. And so I got a really, really good cross-cultural experience. And that was the time when God really opened my heart for the nations of the world. That people around the world needed to hear the gospel, needed to hear the good news of Jesus Christ. So let me ask you this question. When do you think culture began? When do you think culture began? Ooh, you were thinking about it. Didn't quite go up all the way. Oh my goodness, Portia, that's amazing. That's exactly right. Now you can say that culture began maybe with Adam and Eve in the garden, but there was only two of them to begin with. But really, ultimately, culture began, I would say, in Genesis chapter 11. What happened in Genesis chapter 11? She kind of gave the answer already. The Tower of Babel. Oh, Caleb? Okay, great job, Caleb. Oh, okay, well, that's okay. You're all working together as a team. That's great. So the Tower of Babel, what happened at the Tower of Babel? They said, come, let us make for ourselves a city. Let's make a name for ourselves, build a city up to the heavens. And what did God do at that point in time? That's right. He made them all speak different languages, and then he spread them out throughout the known world. And really, that's where I would say that really people groups began. That's where culture began, because these people, they went off into these different lands with their own language, with their own peoples, and then they began to form a culture, a group of people that thought the same way, that lived the same way, that acted the same way, all these different things. And so that's where we would say that culture began. So, cross-cultural missions, and we want to talk about barriers, and also we want to talk about bridges. When you think of the word barriers, what comes to mind? Pardon? A wall, okay. Something that, yes. Okay, you can't get through it. It's something that separates us. And when you think about a bridge, what do you think about, what does a bridge do? It helps you to get across. So a barrier is the exact opposite of a bridge. A barrier is something that stops you or prevents you from doing something, and a bridge opens up the door, opens up the pathway to be able to do what you want to accomplish. And so we're going to look at it from the gospel standpoint. The gospel standpoint. So we're going to see different ways that there are bridges and there are also barriers to the gospel. Okay? So when we say that there's barriers to the gospel, there are things that take place in our world, things that take place in our lives, things that take place in culture that prevent us from effectively sharing the gospel. Would you say that's true? Agree? Okay, good. Okay, so there's barriers to the gospel, but we also want to look and say that there are also bridges to the gospel. And really, this morning we want to look at, I think five different things that are barriers, but they also, these barriers, we can just look at them as like, hey, this is something that's stopping us from sharing the gospel, but we can look at those same barriers as bridges to the gospel as well. And so here's what we're going to do. I think we're going to look here on the screen in just a second. I skipped ahead a little bit, Isaiah. So it's the screen that says barriers and bridges to the gospel. And we have culture, we have language, we have geography and government, poverty, and me. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. Okay? So what I want you to do in your groups for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to give you an assignment, and I want you to talk about how this specific topic is both a barrier, what are specific ways that it's a barrier, and then also what are specific ways that it is a bridge to share the gospel. So I'm going to give you, this group here, you guys have culture, okay? You guys have language, okay? You guys have poverty. I'm going to give these older girls the more difficult one. You girls have geography and government, okay? And number 5 is maybe difficult as well, but it's me. How can I be both a barrier and also a bridge to the gospel, okay? So everybody know what you're doing? Okay, listen, what would be a barrier with culture? Okay. Okay, very good. So the culture is so different, it's so unique, it's difficult to know maybe how to share the gospel, right? Okay, so that definitely could be a barrier because they think differently than we do. They see things differently. They live differently than we do. So what would be, they had a hard time coming up with a bridge, but how can we use culture as a bridge to share the gospel? Anybody have a guess on that? Somebody help me? Yes.
You learn about their culture and share in a way to
That's exactly right. That's one of the best things that you can do is that you learn about their culture. You learn how they think. You learn how they feel. You learn how they see the world. And when you learn those things, it will help you to be able to effectively share the gospel. And it also, we'll talk more about this at the end, but it will also, they will see, like, hey, this person really cares about my culture. Do you think American culture is the only right culture in the world? Yes or no? No. Now sometimes it's easy to think that we know best. We're a civilized society, so we know how everything really works. The rest of the world, they're just kind of all behind us. But that's not always true. Okay, we can learn a lot from other cultures. There's a lot of things, even when we lived in the Middle East for the last 6 years, that we were taught so much about life in ways that we had never thought before from a different perspective because they saw the world differently than we did. And so culture can be both a barrier and it also can be a bridge. The next one we have is language. What do you guys come up with?
Well, obviously, language, that's the barrier.
Yes,
They don't listen to what says what we say, or we don't say what they say.
exactly. So what would be a bridge to share the gospel?
There's basic series, education and translators.
Okay, very good. And I would say, everybody here said education and translators, and I would say that the best one is the first one, is that you educate yourself on how to learn the language. Okay, now when we were in the Middle East, my 2 boys here, Elijah and Dryad, they learned Arabic pretty well, and Heidi, she learned Arabic pretty well as well. I mean, it was like probably a kindergarten, 1st grade level that they were speaking, but I didn't learn Arabic very well at all. But they had a lot more opportunities to interact with people and to share the gospel than I did because of the fact that they learned, and people were like, oh, you learned our language. And it makes them feel like valued that you took the time to learn something that is very important to them. And so if you guys want to speak some Arabic later this afternoon, just go up to Heidi and she'll speak Arabic with you, okay? Or the boys, they can do it too. Okay, great job. Very good. Now the third one was a little more difficult. Girls, what did you come up with?
Sure, I guess I'm working.
Okay, talk loud so everybody can hear you.
So we're thinking more of like going to other countries, so it's expensive, and with geography and obviously language barriers. In governments, some governments, they don't want you over there preaching. Especially like China and India can be very cautious about what you say. You know, that to be there. And then bridges, if you do go to another country, you feel like they respect you more with that extra mile to go.
Very good.
If you actually
Say again. Okay. huge turnout there. So yeah, so that's a barrier and also a bridge. The barrier, some places around the world, like Heidi and I, one time we went to a place in the jungles of Venezuela, and we had to take a plane from America to a big city called Caracas, and then we had to get on a small little plane and fly from Caracas to this place called Port Ayacucho, and then from Port Ayacucho we had to get even a smaller plane, like only 4 people got on the plane, and then we flew into this place called Coche in the middle of the jungles, of the Amazon jungles, and we landed on not a paved runway, but a dirt runway. And so, but we were very fortunate that we were able to do that because many years ago, do you know how people got to that village? That's right, they went by boat. And it took them weeks to get there. And so some places, a barrier is, it's just difficult to get to some of these places that don't have access to airports and roads and bridges and all those sort of things. But also, I thought a good bridge is there are some countries around the world, and like there's an organization called World, what's the one in Kansas City? World Team? Crossworld, where they're working with countries, and the government is actually asking people to come and teach English. They're asking people from America and other countries to come to their place to teach engineering. Like my cousin, he spent about 4 years in China teaching debate in the public school system. And so sometimes the government can actually be the bridge to help us to be able to go into some of these countries and to share the good news of Jesus Christ with people who have never heard the gospel before. And so it can be both a barrier and a bridge. And then the fourth one, poverty.
It can be a barrier because people there are poverty and see what she has and shelves and stuff.
Okay.
Or bricks, like help them with things.
Exactly. Okay, very good. I remember one time I was in India and I was on a river going up through this area north of Rajamundry, and we went to a village and we were there preaching the gospel. And many people listened to the gospel, but there was this one guy that was causing a lot of problems, and he was making a lot of commotion. He kept saying things, of course, because of the language barrier, we didn't know what he was saying. And finally, one of our translators said, "What's this guy upset about? What is he saying?" And what he said was this. He said, "It's really great that you came to our village to share this message with us. But we really don't need this message. What we need is water." And so he had a physical need that needed to be met. He couldn't even think about the gospel. There's some people around the world, they're not even thinking about who God is, who Jesus is, because they're thinking, how am I going to feed my kids? How am I going to get to the next meal? And so poverty can be a barrier for sure, because people are thinking, how can I live day to day? But a bridge is, hey, we can go in, and you know what we did in that village where that man said that? We went and we built a clean water well for them. And they had access to clean water, and then they were more open to hear us share the message of salvation. Some of you girls have been down that river, I think. Did y'all go on that river? That river trip in in India?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, very good. And so you know what I'm talking about. And then the last one is me. Maybe this was difficult too. What did y'all come up with?
So it can be a barrier because it's a combination of all those things. You're different than them, so it may make you scared to share the gospel.
Okay.
And the way it can be a bridge is God can use you to connect them to the gospel.
Exactly. And that's very, very good. You guys did a really, really an awesome job on that. And this last one, me, is some of the things that this barrier is with us personally, and I think some of these barriers are ones that you guys maybe haven't thought about, but maybe you're living them out, is one is just a lack of intimacy with God. Is you're not spending time with God. You're not understanding God's heart for the nation. So I become a barrier because I don't understand God's plan for our life. Number two, some people say, it's not my responsibility. Oh, that's Pastor Lane's responsibility. It's Pastor Jeff's responsibility. It's the pastor's job to do those sort of things. And so that can become a barrier. And sometimes what happens even as you get older is the fact you come to the place and say, I'm just too busy. I've got too much going on. And you begin to live for the American dream. You begin to want to have more money, to have retirement, to have a nice life, to provide for your kids, to have nice toys. And you say, I'm just too busy. I'm working all the time. I don't have time to share the gospel. And that can be a bridge or a barrier to the gospel. I love the Apostle Paul because the Apostle Paul, this is what he said in 1 Corinthians 9:22. He said, to the weak, I became weak that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people that by all means I might save some. And so really what Paul was saying, he said, really, I'll go into any culture, I'll go into any place, any difficulty. I'm going to experience those things for the sake of the gospel. I'm willing to change how I think. I'm willing to change how I live. I'm willing to change how I view the world. Of course, on a biblical, we have to keep a biblical perspective on that, but be able to see the world from a different perspective of how other people see it so that you can effectively share the gospel. And I don't have time this morning, but I really encourage you in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 17 is really a great picture of the Apostle Paul going into a different foreign cross-cultural context. And he, there at Mars Hill in Athens, he was meeting with people. It said that he was in the market, so it showed that he was spending time with people. He was enjoying like that culture, and he learned things about that culture. And through that culture, if you read Acts 17, he was able to share the gospel with them in a way that they could understand it. So I really encourage you to read Acts chapter 17. So we just have a couple minutes left, and the last things that I want to share with you is how can we be effective in cross-cultural missions? How can we be effective in cross-cultural missions? And we've kind of talked about these things already, but the first thing is we need to be students, we need to be people who are learning about cultures. Not only you guys have history classes, you have geography classes, you're learning about different places around the world, but I really encourage you to study and to learn and to know more about different cultures, because the more that you know, the more effective that you can be in sharing the gospel when you understand why people do what they do, why they think how they think, and how they live their life. The second one is to listen. And you guys have done a great job of listening this morning, but I know that many times we like to talk. We like to do a lot more talking than we do listening when we are at a place where we need to learn. Did you notice when we had our little skit up here? Who was doing all the talking? Yeah, I was doing all the talking. And I found when we were in Jordan, a lot of times, I found, especially in our beginning years there, that I was doing a lot of talking and not doing a lot of listening. And I come to find out, especially among the refugee community, that really the refugee community, you know what they wanted? They wanted someone to listen to them. They wanted someone to hear their stories. They wanted someone to share their life with. And not just for me to go in there and tell them all the things that I know, to read them all the Bible verses, to tell them this is what you need to do, this is how you can have a better life, you need to do this, you need to do that. But really just to listen to them. And the more that you listen, the more that you can have compassion, the more that you can understand, the more sympathy that you'll have for the people that you're ministering to. And then the third thing is love. The third thing is love. And I want all of you, if you have your Bibles, take it and turn to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 14 and 15. I want you to look at how loving people and why and how we can love people and be effective in sharing the gospel. So somebody read it real quick and then come up with ways that we can be effectively sharing the gospel. Where does this love come from? And sharing the good news. Okay, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 14 and 15.
Hello. 2 Corinthians 5, 14 through 15. For Christ's love compels us, because we are convinced that one died for all. So when you guys are thinking about this, why do we do what we do? Why did Jonathan and I get on a plane and head to Jordan with 6 kids at the time? You know, why do we do that? Why do we go, you know, we've had ministry here with the Nepalis, we've done ministry in different places all around the world. Why do we go and do all of those things? And this right here is the answer, and it's the very core. Because Christ's love compels us. Because we are convinced that one died for all. And when you get that one died for all, that Jesus died not just for you, but for every soul around you, and you begin to fall in love with Jesus, and you begin to seek Him with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, like we said, the very root of it, then everything else changes. You begin to see people like He does. I remember when I was 11 years old, I gave my heart to the Lord, and I started to seek Him, and I started to pray for my neighbors, for the kids on the school bus, for the kids at my school, and I started to really He burdened my heart for them, because I knew Christ. I had the answer to life I have, and they don't. And it brought me to my
brought me to tears, it brought me to my knees, and I started praying for them. And then, you know what happened after that? I started sharing. It was like he gave me a boldness to be able to talk. And I would talk on the school bus. Some kids didn't know like that, but I would do it anyway because I knew that they needed him more than they needed, anything else that they had. And I would talk in schools, and we went to the malls, and I actually grew up at this youth group a long time ago, and we would go out, and we would go to the malls, and we would share Jesus with people. We'd take every opportunity we could to share, and it was because what changed us from just keeping it all to ourselves, and it's just me and my relationship with God, is because we started to seek him. And when you fall in love with him, you fall in love with who he loves. And he loves everybody all around the world. And then you begin to see people like he does and their value. And so then that's when you cross oceans. That's when you do whatever. Is because nothing else matters more in life than seeing other people know him, because he's the answer to everything. Lacey said earlier, it was a silly question or whatever, but to that game, but she said, Jesus! And I thought it was so sweet, but she's right, that Jesus is really the answer. He's enough, and he's the answer, and everyone in the world needs him, and it's what compels us to go. And we were created to worship him, and so these people, they're seeking to worship him. And you go into these different cultures and these different places, and you'll see they're seeking him. They're wanting to know what the answer is. They're all, and even when you go, like I said, in Roanoke, you go down the street, or you go to the grocery store, even in the mall, you're going to find people all around that are seeking God. Everybody wants to know what the answer is that's going to fill their heart. And so, anyway, I wanted to share that story because it compels us to, his love compels us to go and share with others. On June 18th through 19th, we are going to Camp Bethel for a weekend called Global Challenge. It's going to be fun. You'll be broken up into teams, and we'll have an epic competition, like no other competition in the whole entire world. You're going to really enjoy it. The games and the videos will rock the way that you see the world. It's like traveling all around the world in one little weekend, 2 days, okay? I really encourage you guys to come. Pastor Lane over here has said that if you come, you automatically get a $250 scholarship to go on an international trip with the youth. That's pretty awesome, huh? I think that's pretty awesome. And also, if 15 kids from this youth group go, your name will be entered into a prize to win, or entered into a drawing to win $150 prize, okay? So I want you to think about it, what you're doing on June 18th and 19th, and go ahead and talk to your friends, get signed up today for it, because this is something that you don't want to miss. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to have an incredible time. We're going to have good food, good friends, good fellowship. We're going to actually go downtown for part of Saturday and actually meet some people from around the world. So it's going to be like I said, a cross-cultural experience. You're going to love it. And anyway, I encourage you guys to think about it and come. Can I pray? Okay. Lord, I just pray for every soul that's in this room right now. Lord, you know where they're at. Only you do. God. And I just think about how this was the group that I came to and that stirred me up for Christ. So I pray that for every soul in this room that you would speak to them, that they would fall madly in love with you, that they put you first in their life. They'd want you more than they want anything else in the whole wide world, and that they would stir each other up like iron sharpens iron. I pray that you build the people up in this group, that they'll be building each other up with the words that they say, and encouraging each other to seek after you, because your name being glorified is the most important thing in the world. And when we glorify your name, we are fulfilling the very purpose we were created for. So I just pray that for this group. I pray that every person in this room will be able to come and will make an effort to come, because they will not miss out, Lord, when they come on this June 18th to 19th weekend. Lord, and I pray that you begin to speak to their hearts, Lord, even as they've been studying the last couple of weeks about your heart for the world and your plan, and just the next couple of weeks they're going to be studying again, and not this weekend, and just show them what part that you have them to play in your great plan to show the whole entire world your love. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
And I hope all of you will come to that weekend. It will be a fantastic weekend. It'll be a lot of fun. As we close today, there's one final point, is we love, but we also live out our faith. We live out our faith both by our words and by our actions. And today we talk about cross-cultural, we talk about going across the oceans, going to different cultures. But I want you to know that there are different cultures, different groups of people that live right here in the Roanoke Valley that are from all over the world. There was a Nepalese family that we got to know a number of years ago, and they became some of our best and closest friends. And we got to know them. Actually, a couple of them came to faith in Jesus Christ as a result of the work that God was doing through this church and through Heidi's life, our kids' life. And so it was really amazing. And so there's different cultures here in our city that you can get to know, that you can learn, that you can live out your faith through your words and through your actions, and you can show love to them. And it would be a great, great way. Maybe they're even in your school. Maybe some of you have people at your school there from different cultures that you can get to know. Even yesterday, I'm just telling you how simple it is. Yesterday, I went to Dollar General to pick up a couple things for Heidi. And when I was at Dollar General, there was this gentleman that was looking at a cereal box, and he was looking at all the ingredients, looking at how much calories this has, that has. And I said, oh, don't worry about what the ingredients are. I said, just enjoy that box of cereal. And he's like, no, I got to be careful. I got to watch my sodium, he said. And you know what? I got an opportunity to talk with him. He was actually an Indian that grew up in Jamaica. And we had a fantastic conversation with each other. We actually ended up exchanging numbers with each other. And right there in the Dollar General, I had the opportunity to share the gospel with this gentleman. He was so open. He was actually seeking. He wanted to know more about God. And so there are opportunities like that all over this Roanoke Valley where you can just meet someone or get to know them and be able to share the gospel. And I found out that a lot of times internationals, they really want to talk about like spiritual things. And so sometimes you feel like, oh, nobody wants to talk about spiritual things. They don't talk about God. They don't talk about Jesus. But I found a lot of our international friends, they enjoy talking about these things. And so it's a very, very easy, simple conversation. So I just want to encourage you to live out your faith, both through your words and also they see Jesus by your actions. How will they know that you're my disciples? By the way that you love one another. So again, thank you guys so much for allowing us to share this morning. And really our hope and prayer is that you will come to know and to love God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind, and strength. And as you know God, you'll get to know his heart for the nations, and you'll desire to share his love with people here in the Roanoke Valley and also cross-culturally around the world. So again, we hope to see you on June 18 and 19. If you have any questions, come see us or call us, text us, and we'll be glad to help you. I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys soon.